So our first, turn it over to our good friend Ernst, and he will get into much more depth around System Platform and System Platform Enterprise and OMI. Thank you. Take it away, Ernst.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Maury, and hi everyone. John stole a little bit of my thunder, so that will allow me to make up some time here. I do believe you'll go into some depth in some other parts. So I'm just going to jump into our timeline a little bit, show you what the future looks like and what the current release looks like more in depth, and then we'll put up our predictive hats a little bit and think about how we want the future to look like after that. So right now, you probably know that the previous release was 2020 R2 Service Pack 1. We released that pretty much at the end of 2021, early 2022. We had our Service Pack 1 release come out. The purpose of this is just to show, we started working on OMI over here at the top left of 2017. So you can see that OMI has been in the market now. We're going on 8 years. So that's a pretty a solid and mature product as it is now. Now, I see the question asked a couple of times. System Platform 2023 was just released on the 1st of August. We released it, so it's available right now. What we focused on there, a couple of main themes. We talked about security, scalability, always something that's really important to us. Of course, apps or content, or we sometimes refer to that as extensions, an important theme for us. We also did a little bit of work on the engineering side to improve the workflows and the capability of doing rapid engineering or bulk engineering on some of our tools. We did the UI UX work that John already showed a little bit of, and of course there's OMI Web, and I'll delve a little bit deeper into the how and the why and where to find it on that. So let's just have a little bit in depth, and this is if you remember the 3 bits that John spoke about: System Platform Supervisory, or this is what we're going to look at now as the supervisory bit. That's your System Platform as we come to know and love it. What did we do for the 2023 release? So, of course, we added some interesting things in the security side, the ability to use Azure Active Directory as an authentication provider, which I think will be very useful in modern IT environments. We've made some improvements in the capability of alarm logging, so we've improved our compliance to CFR 21 Part 11, if that's something you're interested in. OMI compliance is now on par with in-touch compliance. And of course, there's the general hardening that we always do. This one I don't expand on a lot, but we do spend quite a significant portion of our capacity on making sure that the product that goes out into the market is pretty hardened and a solid, secure product. In terms of scalability, we have done a lot of work over the last, 3 releases. It was a massive effort to improve our check-in capabilities and to really, in the early days of System Platform, we had 10 or 20 objects that you could check in, or maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or even 10,000. But as it grew, we ended up with 100,000 and 200,000 objects. So check-ins became a little bit sluggish. So we had to make some changes to the underlying technology. And we've completed that now. The 2023 product will have very fast check-ins across the board. Doesn't matter if you've got wizards or not in there. So we encourage you to have a look at that. If you've used Flex before, one of the things that we had questions about is the ability to add single Flex engines, so that I can buy 2 Flex engines and run it. I don't have to buy an unlimited app engine if I need 2 engines. So we did that and we built it into the product. So it's very easy. You just go plus, add however many engines you want on there, and it will do the Flex licensing for you. In terms of apps, a couple of improvements we've done in the Alarm app, and we are making some more in the future. So spoiler alert, there will be some more coming. Right now, we just had to get a handle on what we can do. First off, we solidified and put the alarm group and event translation on the same floor as the alarm message translation, so that can be done now if that's something you're interested in. Upgraded content presenter, if that's a tool that you've used, you're gonna love this new one. The content presenter 2022, we removed there were some confusing ways of configuring it. Those functionalities have been deprecated, so you won't lose anything that you've done. We'll translate it into the new functionalities. And the new functionalities really expands the usability of Content Presenter. You've got siblings that you can add, and you can have multiple selections and stuff. It's really, really cool. The Map app is the other thing. It's probably the major thing we did for 2023. We wanted to do 1 or 2 improvements on that Map app. Turned out we did a whole lot more, so I'm going to put that as a separate theme in there. And I know later on today, I think Tim is going to walk you guys through some of the details of these things. So I'm not going to show you any of the details or go into any of the videos. I'm hoping that it'll show at least the map app here, because it is really a huge improvement. We've added a capability of asset-specific zoom level. So an asset doesn't have to just have the layer zoom level. It can have its own zoom level when it starts up the first time. So if you have assets of the same type but they're different sizes, you can have them zoom into different sizes right from the start. We fixed some issues with getting that initial asset to make sure that when a map shows the first time, that it makes sure that that initial asset is immediately in focus. That we had a lot of fun in the previous release when we added layouts as content, and having a map app in there had some interesting behaviors, and we fixed that behavior so it's nice and consistent. The view app namespace, this is huge actually. The view app namespace is now available directly from that map app. This means you can do things like filtering and searching and all of those things directly from the map app, and you can actually interact with the graphics directly on the map app, not just the asset and where they are, but to actually change custom properties and things on that graphic that's sitting on the map app, which really becomes a very nice little feature. We've added layer control directly. So layer control is usually done by zoom level. So if I zoom between this level and this level, the layer can be visible. In the past, it was visible, but now in this new version, you can select if you want it to be visible. So you can switch the layer on and off dynamically in runtime. Pretty cool. This last one is also very huge. That's dynamic properties. Dynamic properties. That's the ability to directly influence and read zoom levels and GPS locations directly off the map. And then the big one there is the dynamic adding of content. So what this means is I can in runtime read a database somewhere with, I don't know, GPS locations of vehicles or whatever, and then dynamically with a script go and add those vehicles directly to the map in runtime. I don't have to pre-configure them. I don't have to have those assets available in System Platform. So I can dynamically add a graphic to the map and remove it if I need to, which is a pretty neat feature. In terms of engineering, this is, for those of you who know me, this is it's one of my pet features that I like to wanted to really fit in there, is improve the bulk engineering capability of System Platform, to be able to create multiple objects and things quickly. And we had the CSV import. It was lacking wizard support, so we've added complete wizard support. It allows you to go and use that CSV file to set settings of wizards, to make choices, to make options, set values for settings and things like that on individual instance. It's a pretty neat feature. We also added, actually this data type was there before, it was just hidden. We've exposed the big string data type. So now where you can drop down, you have Boolean and float and those things, you have a big string data type. And this is basically we implemented the .NET big string, which is, I think the limit is 2 gig or something like that, which I would recommend you don't put like 50 or 100,000 big strings with 2 gig worth of data on it, because you need a lot of memory to do that. But this allows you to really get strings that are much more capable than the normal strings. So you can dump things like XML files and JSON strings and things in there and really move them around in your application. Pretty neat feature as well. You're probably aware of that, and I think the communication guys will probably touch on that. We a while ago started, stopped investing in the DI objects, to have that goes DI objects directly in the IDE, and we recommended that customers move over to OI servers because they're much faster and more modern and all sorts of benefits from that. The fun part was, though, that there were some difficulties in moving that and how we do that. So one of the things that we did is we made the OPC client a little bit more versatile. So in 2023, we allowed you to go and inject a hierarchical path in there, and there's some things in there that you can do to make the transition from those old deprecated DI objects into OPC client with OI servers much easier without having to go and redo all of your IO, because that's basically the big pain that we try to avoid. GRAccess Toolkit, if you've used that and interested in that, we've added wizard support in the GRAccess Toolkit now. Other thing we did is the GRAccess Toolkit is no longer a separate toolkit. It's now an API that's part of the product. So every time we release a new product, you will get an updated version of that GRAccess API that comes with it. Okay. Dynamic images and graphics. This is a small little feature that we've had in InTouch for a while, and we really did need this in OMI. So we've enabled the image element to be able to dynamically in runtime, you can swap it out and show different images in here. In terms of UI UX, so the user experience improvements that we did there is one of the things is we improved history playback. Those of you that used history playback will know that if you referenced any tag name in the Galaxy that wasn't historized, it would show up during playback as not a number or invalid or things like that. That was done on purpose because we didn't want to create the confusion where someone thinks he's looking at history, but it's not because it's looking at a live value or something like that. So we had to make some other changes as well, but we did that in this version. It will now have a dual set of data coming in. So if you switch over to history playback and a specific tag doesn't have history, it will go back to the live value, and then you can optionally go and indicate that by a status indicator by saying, so if you, for instance, have alarm limits that are not historized, but you switch over to history, then those alarm limits, you just put in a little indicator there to let the user know that what you're looking at right now is live values and not the history playback. So I really like this because it really completes the history playback for us. We did some work on the alarm severity counts and being able to more granularly select, those little alarm adorners that show up on the navigation tree. Which ones are actually counted? Are the silenced one counted? Are the dismissed ones counted? Which ones are really counted on those? User interface modernization, not going to talk a lot about that. John already showed you the ribbon bar and the new backstage. So a lot of work that went in there. We didn't just try and make it pretty. We went through a lot of these workflows, and we're going to continue doing that. How does a user do X, Y, and Z? And then, how do we make it faster and easier for him to walk through that workflow? Of course, we also improved the help file system. I actually love it a lot, the one we have now. We had to do that to replace the dependency on Internet Explorer, which Microsoft killed off now. So the new help file system is completely dynamic and it will work in any browser. And we're going to continue improving that over time. If you've seen web widgets, these are controls like our apps or so, but they work on a web page. So we've improved support for that. So we will now allow you to put those things on a graphic and run it in OMI desktop as well. So we've improved the support for these web widgets quite a bit. And then we added a new web widget for everyone to play with. It's a grid view. It's a pretty neat one. It has all of the nice things of filtering and sorting, and you can set all the colors and everything in there. So I would encourage you to go and play around with this web widget, this grid view web widget. That combined with the previous feature allows you to take that grid and put it inside an industrial graphic. So you can put it right next to other industrial graphics and feed information from that and set things up in there, which is pretty neat. Now, I needed to get to OMI Web, and I know that I'm over time, but I'm stealing a little bit of extra time. The OMI Web, just quickly where that came from. Now, one thing to know is OMI Web today, as John said, is only available for System Platform Enterprise. So we split our product into two parts: System Platform Enterprise. John spoke a little bit about the need for us to do that. And basically, this is to address the unified operations centered space that we have. And the only way to get that enterprise is via a View Operations Control Enterprise. That is the only way that you can get a hold of that. So quickly, the reasoning behind that, John already touched on some of this. This digital journey, you've probably seen versions of this. We have the reactive part, something happened, there's a human reaction. This is kind of our small start HMI. Then you have your supervisory, human preventative action, you have integrated values, you start doing the collaboration where you start using systems that are not directly involved in the control of the manufacturing process or of the industrial process that you are. So you've got external systems starting to collaborate, and those external systems help inform decisions on the fly. And then we get to this nirvana of unified operations where those external systems are not just informing, but those external systems are completely integrated with my entire operational system. So I can directly move between these systems without leaving the front end that I'm in. And that's when we get to the enterprise operations and control part of it. John spoke a little bit about the number of users in this environment. So I'm just going to throw that on the screen a little bit. Talking about one user interface, this is about 50. 100, 500, and we talk about unified operations, we've got customers asking for 15,000 users on that interface. So System Platform can cover this pretty well. This is where it lives. It works all the way up here. It does very well in the collaboration space. But what we're trying to do with the enterprise version is to figure out what is needed here at this top end that is different, materially different from what we need in supervisory on the System Platform standard. And that is basically what we're going to build in the System Platform enterprise side. So let me try and run through that quickly. We've all seen pictures like this. This is how do we get to System Platform? You have some kind of physical world with some controllers on top of that. System Platform sits on top of that, gives you an asset model, right? It's your digital twin if you want. And then we draw pictures of it. Industrial graphics sits on top of that and draws the pictures. And then, of course, you have all these modules that can plug into System Platform. And this is kind of stock standard System Platform. You all know this part. So where did the integrate part come from is System Platform is pretty good at getting data from non-industry data sources. We started seeing a lot of customers talking about SQL queries and web services and REST APIs and SOAP API and all sorts of ways of getting data into System Platform that's not really the standard PLC route. Now, that brings us to the collaboration part of it, because what you've done up until this point, so let me just scroll that back for a second. Up until this point, everything that goes into there that I want to see on a screen, I had to go and draw a picture for. I had to go and put an industrial graphic down and then massage this data into that industrial graphic. What we want to do is we want to get to this collaboration phase where we say these third-party systems, they have their own user interfaces. Most of the time, they have web user interfaces. We even have that on our own one. So if I'm talking about Historian, I've got a trend control. Actually, I have web interfaces there as well. I've got Insight and things like that will give me web interfaces or web UI. And this is where we really want to collaborate. This is what OMI is about, is to be able to say, I'm putting those industrial graphics that I have, and I can still use them, and I put them side by side with the user interfaces that I have everywhere else, the web user interfaces, the software-specific interfaces, and they are all running in context side by side on the same screen. So how does that get to unified operations? Why do we have the enterprise bit that we talked about? The idea was to get to those 15,000 users. That's where we want to get, to really get to those number of users. Now we could get there with in-touch access anywhere. We could get to around maybe 100 to 500 users, depending on how we've set it up. But it needed a remote desktop session per user, so it doesn't really scale well. We needed an enterprise native, a native web. Enterprise needs a native web solution there. So first of all, software UI, those specific .NET controls and stuff, they won't run in a web browser. So we have to go for web UI. Second off is when we start talking about industrial graphics, it's actually two parts. It's the evaluation of information and then drawing it, modeling or rendering if you want to. So what we did for 2023 is we released an OMI web browser in the client. Does all the navigation layout, all the fancy things that OMI can do. It runs those web UI parts directly in there, so no problem there. And we can draw inside a web client, no problem. Which means the only thing that we have to replicate is this evaluation process. And we can run a process per user, which actually gives us a lot of scalability. So we can suddenly, instead of having 30 users on a machine, we can go to 100 or 200 users on a machine and serve them all. All right, so things we added, OMI web client, John already showed you the workspaces, and there's a couple of really fancy pieces of content like the scatter plot and Microsoft Power BI and the Vivo OSI Pi Vision app and things like that. Also a Sankey app. Now, Maury, I can still talk a little bit about the future that we want to go into, but I know I'm running out of time. So I can say, let me stop here and maybe try and see if I can get your agenda back on time.
How much time do you need for the future? People always like to hear the future.
About 5 minutes.
Hey, Anil, try to turn your camera off there if you can, buddy. And then we'll ask Tim to shorten his presentation slightly so he doesn't overdo or redo anything you have. So why don't you people always love the future, so a couple minutes on that and then we'll jump over to Tim.
All right, okay. Available soon, things that we're doing out of band is we are creating a new version of the application object toolkit. I really wanted to say it will be here by December. I'm not going to make that. I'm trying my best to do that. It's probably going to be around about March next year that we're going to complete that. And there's a new deployment guide that will come out as well. Now, In terms of what we're going to release in the future, we are planning as System Platform Enterprise 2023 R2 release. It's currently scheduled for the end of Q3 next year, so about end of September we should be functionally complete, and then we have to do all the commercial release activities. So I would say a month or so after that you should see it on the shelves. In the middle there, you're going to see something really interesting. We're already building that. John spoke about that. That is a SaaS version, OMI as a service, cloud version of OMI. We've got a customer that we're already working with. We're going to beta to them in production around about end of Q1. And by around about the end of Q2, we want to make that a generally available service so that you can have a customer that runs OMI Enterprise as a service directly in our cloud. Of course, the supervisory side of things will still continue. So there will be a System Platform 2023 R2 on that side. And as John said and stole my thunder, is yes, we are very much working towards getting an OMI web on the supervisory side as well, so that you have a supervisory version, on-prem version of OMI web in that next release. And then far out in the future, and I like to talk about this one a little bit, we're seeing System Platform as a service. And I put System Platform in quotes because I'm pretty sure that we won't recognize it as System Platform when we get there. It's probably going to be some other things. Maybe there will be some bits of System Platform surviving there, but we want to get to a cloud version of System Platform, or that supplies our backend services for us. So quickly, next steps. We know there's some limitations here because we have to run our evaluation processes on our server side. So what we want to do with the 2023 R2 release is we are moving that evaluation part directly onto the browser. Now, what this means is all the hard work is sitting on the browser side. We have none of the hard work at the back end, so this becomes extremely scalable because all you need to do is supply, the data, which is not a lot in comparison, and of course the content once, and after that everything happens on the browser side. So you can run 15,000 users off that server. That's the goal here. And then the other part of it is you'll see that this little bit looks like this little bit here, which means we have feature parity. In other words, everything that works in the desktop will work exactly like that in the web client. And that's the nirvana that we want to get to with 2023 R2, is to get to a point where things that work on the desktop works exactly like it on the client. There might be some gaps in the first one, but we want to get there in our eventual release to have a single combined unified environment. Of course, this works for enterprise and supervisory, and that's why we will have a supervisory one. If I look at the next steps for enterprise, and this will be my last little bit here, is we said that we're going to do a cloud native OMI as a service. We're in the process of doing that right now. And how this thing gets its information is, many of this piece of software is already sitting in people's cloud, or maybe even in ours. Some of our stuff is already there. If you talk about insight and analytics and things like that, it's already there. So we have a nice cloud solution on that side. The bit we are missing is this, this single source truth that we have. This is System Platform. Now today we have customers that run this in a VM in Azure and in different places. But that's not a nice solution. IT companies departments will hate you for it, and it's not nice to maintain that VM in there. We communicate with MQTT. That works pretty good. We've got customers that open up a tunnel and they do multi-galaxy communication between on-prem and cloud System Platform. That also works pretty good. But what we really want there is System Platform as a service. And again, note the quotes there because I think that name might also change over time. Internally, we just have a project name at the moment. So what that will give us, IT-friendly connectivity, things that will understand how to talk to web services and APIs and REST services, but not just talk to them, but also understand what happens if those things die, store and forwarding. Do we have redundancy in those channels and things like that? Multidimensional modeling, not just an asset model, but I would like to be able to say, for instance, model my maintenance in there as well, model my customer orders in there, model my suppliers in there, so that I can look at an asset and understand, who's the OEM, when last was it serviced, what did it produce, what products was sold, what products was consumed in this specific asset, and those kinds of things that are wider than just the industrial bits and pieces. And then, of course, we need to have this being a full enterprise data platform that can that can also calculate and do business logic and store the business logic and regurgitate it and things like that. So now I am really finished with everything. This is our future. I've got my little tag there, information subject to change, but this is the versions 2, 3 in the future where we want to see ourselves go with the enterprise.